Welcome back, Ling 101 students, to this screencast where we will be drawing a syntax tree for a sentence. The sentence that we will be working on is the cashier at the front will help you with your refund. You might want to get out a piece of paper and jot that sentence down so you can follow along with me as I work through this sentence. First thing to keep in mind is that when we are drawing our phrase trees and sentence trees, we're always following those two merge rules that Chomsky put forward that will capture all the different phrases and sentences we need to worry about. Those two merge rules were XP breaks down into spec X bar, and then the second rule, X bar breaks down into X followed by comp. So using those two rules, we can draw all of these different phrases as well as the entire sentence, which is the subject plus the predicate. So that's where we're going to start, is figuring out what we've got in terms of subject versus a predicate. Because as you see in the how this X bar structure translates into a sentence, is that the X is replaced by I. And we get an IP I bar I, where I stands for inflection. Instead of calling it a sentence, we call it an inflection phrase. So we have IP breaking down to NP I bar, and then we have I bar breaking down into I VP. The NP is where we will have the subject of the sentence. The VP is where we have the predicate of the sentence. That head inflection node is where we indicate either the tense of the sentence or we link in a modal auxiliary verb into that slot. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is figure out which part of the sentence actually is the subject. Who or what is this sentence all about? The cashier at the front falls in that subject position. For your subject NP, we have to include all the information that answers the question who or what the sentence is about, but not including the what happened part. That's why at the front is also included in the subject, because at the front gives us more information about the head noun in the noun phrase cashier without actually saying what happened with this cashier, because that's reserved for the predicate. So next thing we do is figure out the head noun of the subject noun phrase, which, as I just mentioned, is cashier. So you find your head, link it in to your tree. We always anchor our tree in place with our head. So we find the head cashier, we draw our three levels of structure, noun phrase breaking down to N bar, breaking down to head N, down to cashier. By anchoring our tree in place with our head, we can now establish the basic structure of the phrase, because we know if there are any words that come in front of the head, they fall in that specifier position, which is branching down from the phrase level. And we know if there are any words that come after the head, it's in that complement position, branching down from the N bar level. So here we have the in front of cashier in specifier position. The options for specifier are always determiner if you're dealing with a noun phrase, degree word if you're dealing with an adjective, adverb, or preposition phrase, or qualifier if you're dealing with a verb phrase. So of course the here is a determiner. Even if we didn't know that, that's the only option. It has to be a determiner within a noun phrase. Now we deal with the complement. Complements come after the head. Here we have a bunch of words at the front coming after the head, which makes sense because complements are always entire phrases. Even if it's just a single word, we still represent it as a phrase. At the front is a phrase. We just have to figure out what kind of phrase it is. Now hopefully your eye is drawn to that little word at, which is a spatial word, like let's meet over at the bookstore. Spatially relating word, preposition. So hopefully your eye is drawn to that and you identify at the front as a preposition phrase. Most important thing is to be able to figure out the kind of phrase you have. So at the front is a preposition phrase, with at being the head of the preposition phrase. Then we see that we have some words that come after the head. So that means they must be complement, and that means they must be an entire phrase, and that means they will branch down from the P bar level. We just have to figure out what kind of phrase they are. The front is a noun phrase, and that's almost always the kind of structure you'll get for a preposition phrase, is the head preposition followed by a noun phrase. And sure enough, we have that structure here. So again, now that we've got this noun phrase, we have to establish which word is the head, link the head into the tree, showing the 3 levels of structure, anchor it into place. Then we see there's a word in front, which must be specifier. Specifier always branches down from the phrase level. Specifiers are always determiners, degree words, or qualifiers. And in a noun phrase, it has to be a determiner and nothing else. Okay, now we move on to the predicate. So again, first thing we need to do is figure out the head. Always start with your head. One way to ensure that you always get the right head verb in the predicate is to figure out which is the word that would actually change if you changed the tense. Let's say we put this into the past tense, then it would be the cashier at the front helped you with your refund, so that establishes help as the head verb of the verb phrase. So again, link your head into the tree, showing 3 levels of structure. Now, within a verb phrase, the next thing I always like to do is to figure out if there is a direct object. That, again, gives structure to my predicate. So I ask myself, do we verb something? Or in this case, someone. So in this case, yes, we do help someone, and that's you, so you is the direct object. Direct object is always a noun phrase. It's an object, it's a thing, an entity, so it's a noun phrase. Direct objects as complements, because they come after the head verb, always branch down from the V bar. In this case, it's just a single word, but we still show it's a phrase with the 3 levels of structure. Next thing we need to do is finish the rest of the complement structure. In this case, we have some words left over, and hopefully with your refund makes sense as a grouping of words that all go together. We just need to figure out what kind of phrase it is. Hopefully your brain identifies with as a preposition, and so you know this is a preposition phrase, and with is the head preposition. So this is a second complement. Help someone with something. We've got those 3 basic structures to our verb phrase. And now we see that we have some words after the head, which must be complement. Complements always branch down from the bar level. And as typical in preposition phrases, we have a noun phrase complement. And refund is the head of that noun phrase. Your is in that specifier position because it comes in front of the head, which means it has to be a determiner. Now the last thing we need to do is deal with this will word in front of the head. And previously I said that if you have a word in front of your head, then it has to be specifier. Well, the exception to that is in the predicate, because there's actually 2 options for words that come in front of the head verb. One of them, of course, would be a qualifier in that specifier position within the verb phrase. But the other option is that it could actually be a modal auxiliary. And if it's a modal auxiliary, then it actually fits in that I slot on the tree. So we have to be able to identify or distinguish between modal auxiliaries and qualifiers. How do we do that? Well, we think about what they do, what the point or function of qualifiers and modals is. A qualifier typically indicates the frequency of the event. Words like always, sometimes, occasionally, frequently, or just and only, which limit in some other way. But in this case, I slot is still open, so the verb itself would be tensed. You could put it into the past or switch between the past and the non-past tense on the verb and still be grammatical. To identify a modal, probably the best thing is just to always have this set of words in your mind as a group. The ood pairs, can, could, will, would, shall, should, and then the 3 M's, may, must, might. So that whenever you encounter one of these, you know, oh, right away, that's a modal. That gets slotted in under I. Yes, will was part of that list of modals. So we label I as a modal and link it into the tree. Now, if you forget what's a modal and what's not a modal, you can always test and figure it out by seeing if you can also put in a qualifier, because there's still room on the tree for a qualifier adverb in there. So let's say we threw the word occasionally in there, and that still renders a grammatical sentence. The cashier at the front will occasionally help you with your refund. Since we know occasionally is a qualifier that would fit in that specifier position under the verb phrase, that's extra verification that will is in fact a modal auxiliary. Another way we know it's a modal is because with that I slot filled with the modal, we have no tense on the verb. Because if we didn't have the word will in there, we would have to say the cashier at the front helps you with your refund or helped you with your refund. But because we have the word will there, the verb is tenseless, without any kind of inflectional ending on it. And there is our completed tree.